Hello and welcome to the Raisina Ideas Pod. My name is Mannat and we are here for a panel discussion on transforming the blue from brown to green. And for our viewers, if this title is a little too cryptic, we will discuss the very crucial intersection of the blue economy, our very collective sustainable aspirations and ocean governance. I mean, it's about time we reevaluate our relationship with the oceans, which in a way is the ultimate global commons. However, our very vital ecosystem today is under threat from overpollution, from overfishing, and of course, the very devastating impacts of climate change. And to dive into this topic, I have with me three incredible panelists, and I'm going to briefly introduce them. Olivier Povrede, Ambassador at Large for the Poles and Maritime Issue. He's also the Special Envoy of the French President for the Oceans. We have Johanna Christensen, the CEO of the Global Maritime Forum, Denmark. And we have Finn Mortensen, Executive Director, State of Green, Denmark. So welcome to you all, and thank you for joining us. I'd like to turn to you first, Ambassador. Now, there are various multilateral efforts that have been underway for ocean governance, biodiversity preservation, say from the COP15, which had the Montreal Agreement, even at Sharm el-Sheikh more recently at COP27. We have UNEP working towards restricting production of first-use plastic. We've got the WTO as well that's really trying to counter-negotiate the damaging subsidies on overfishing, for example. Now, there have been various multilateral efforts that have been underway. In your opinion, have they been effective so far in advancing or securing and ensuring our oceans are truly open, sustainable, and free? And if not, what are those opportunities? Where do you see those opportunities where we can really all come together and collaborate to make sure our oceans are safe and secure and sustainable as well? And what are the challenges that you see in these collaboration in terms of conflicting interests, and how do you think we can address them?
But governing the oceans, in fact, actually a new concept. The convention governing the blue economy and blue part of the world under the auspice of the United States dates back just for 40 years. So this constitution of the sea was concerned mainly by establishing, what we call the EEZ, the Economic Exclusive Zone, for each country with a maritime coastline. And the truth is that despite some conflicts, especially in Asia, between China, I would say Japan and Russia, and some other Asian countries, the system of the EEZ works quite well, in fact. And in fact, despite some numerous geopolitical conflicts, we were very happy to sign the treaty, the agreement on BBNG, biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction, very recently at the United States in New York in 2023. We have to ratify that, but that's extremely important because we are speaking about 60% of the global surface of the sea. It's not nothing. So consider now as a common good. That's important to repeat that. Yeah. The ocean is a common good. The ocean must now be protected. And particularly through a network of marine protected area. And as you know, there are so many dangers threatening the ocean: sea level rise, erosion, pollution, plastic pollution, industrial pollution, so many of them, fishing, illegal unreported fishing, overfishing, so erosion, there are so many threats. Really, what we need probably is to have, as you said, a COP. There is a COP for climate, there's a COP of biodiversity, but the lack really having such a COP, a binding instrument for the ocean. And that's the way we are going to organize the next UN Ocean Conference, which will take place in Nice 25. That will be the third one, which will be for us a turning point for the ocean. The ocean deserves more than to be a side event of climate or biodiversity. And in Nice, what we want to achieve is something as important for the ocean as was the COP21 in Paris for the in 2021, the COP20 for the 2015, for the climate. So a real turning point. What we need for that is to have quite important level of political commitment. So we are expecting something more than 100 leaders, head of states and government. Your leader, the Prime Minister Modi, will be there, as most important maritime countries' leaders will be there as well. delegates from all the member states of the UN and scientists and also blue economy and finance people. So all these people really will deliver what we call the NOAA, the Nice Ocean Agreement, which should be not binding, but as we are working on the plastic treaty, as you say, as deep sea mining, that's a main issue also, which is very concerned. The discussion about illegal grants at the WTO, all this negotiation will probably
come together.
Yeah, I hope so. And also the ratification of the BBNJ process. And India will be a key player. And us, European and India, we have to imagine a new strategy for the blue economy, because China is so important. Looking just at the ports and the commercial, the maritime transport. Well, we are not so small in Denmark with Maersk and France with CGM. That's important transport maritime leaders. But we have to imagine this kind of blue diplomacy, which will be, for the next years, probably the best way to discuss between the country all together. I don't think there will be war on the sea. I'm not this kind of people who say there will be in the South Sea or Mediterranean Sea or in Arctic. There won't be there. The war will be mainly commercial. What are they going the present routes? Canal de Suez, Panama. I think there will be some people from Mauritius Island who will speak as well. So what is going to be probably in, let's say, 50 years road to the Arctic? So the war will be mainly commercial. So we have to think about that and to be as influential as some countries like United States or China are now. So.
Understood. Thank you. And I think blue diplomacy, as you said, is certainly the way to blue economy. So I hope we can make that happen. And thank you for all your efforts in putting that together in your conference. So good luck with that.
Please come to Nice in June 25.
Absolutely. We look forward to that. I think I'll turn to you now, Johanna. And I think the ambassador also highlighted the commercial aspect of the maritime value chain. And I think it's becoming increasingly clear today how international shipping should not just be a beneficiary of the green transition agenda, but instead should learn to play a very active role in deciding the pace and direction of the transition as well. But unfortunately, at this point in time, this isn't really a priority for either governments or international institutions or multilateral institutions as well, for that matter. So in your opinion, what are those national and regional policies that governments should look at? And not just governments, but regional leaders and powers should also be considering to be really able to decarbonize the maritime value chain, and particularly in the context of international shipping. And now, while this is more from a government perspective, I'm also very keen to know, in your experience, what are private leaders and private maritime leaders considering and companies considering in terms of new age, low carbon technologies? Where do we stand at this point in time, and how can we really scale it up to truly transform the industry?
Yeah. Well, thank you for that question, and I have to beg to differ on your premise of the question. In fact, there is lots happening in the multilateral space. Just this past summer, the International Maritime Organization that regulates international shipping, and shipping is one of the few sectors that actually has an international regulator, came to an agreement that brings the goals, the decarbonization goals for the shipping sector in line with the important Paris Agreement, and thus aligns the long-term strategic direction for the sector in terms of its sort of climate alignment with the broader international goals. Of course, setting long-term objectives and then putting them into practice in the near term, that's a huge challenge. And that's one that this sector is experiencing as well. And that's where national and regional policy can play an incredibly important role. We really think about this as a transition that is happening like many other transitions. It's an S curve. We're in the early stages of that S, which is that low. And right now we're doing everything we can in order to put ourselves on that sort of that faster part of the trajectory. Exactly, that faster trajectory, the swoosh where it really happens very fast that we see in other transitions as well. So in this early stage of the transition, it's really about preparing. It's putting the technologies in place, and they're really maturing very quickly. So there are some technologies that are already becoming commercial technologies. There are others that are in those
Can you
final
give us a few
stages.
examples, maybe? What are those?
Well, there's lots
technologies?
on energy efficiency technologies. So that's everything from wind assist in terms of propulsion of large ocean-going vessels to zero-emission vessel technologies. So the engines, effectively, that need to run on zero-emission fuels. So the first generation of engines is already being put into ships that are being built as we speak. And so that's at a commercialization phase, whereas there are further technologies that are rapidly emerging behind that. And so right now, what it's about is really about putting the frameworks in place that will allow for the market to develop rapidly. The biggest barrier is the cost gap between our traditional fossil fuels and the zero-emission fuels of the future for the sector. The most likely fuels to succeed for shipping are green hydrogen derived. So actually the cost of renewable energy is the primary driver of bringing down the cost gap. And so there are discussions underway at the International Maritime Organization about how to close that cost gap through economic and technical measures. But at a national and a regional level, lots can be done in the meantime to help close that cost gap and thus allow for investments to happen into not only the ships and the technologies, but much more importantly, the energy infrastructure on land that needs to deliver the fuel to the sector. About 90% of the cost of the transition is not actually at sea, it's on land. It's in port and energy infrastructure. Actually, the vast amount of it is into the energy capacity to deliver the fuels to the sector. And so that's really where we need the frameworks to come into place. I think India has a tremendous opportunity in this context. It has a huge green energy potential. It sits at a key logistics, geographical on major trade lanes. It has a huge potential to be a key bunkering and logistics hub. It's a big trading nation. So India has a tremendous opportunity. And you have a lot of policies already emerging.
Yes,
so there's
we
a
also
big
have a national hydrogen mission. So it's something that our government is really pushing forth. And it could definitely be a hub for hydrogen
policy
exports.
that support the development of that green hydrogen market and the fuels that are derivatives of green hydrogen and that can help connect supply and demand. Those are really the types of policies that will help at this early stage of the transition for shipping.
Thank you. Thanks, Johanna. And I'm happy to know that we are on the right track and there is a lot of work that's happening there. So that's good news. That's certainly the promise of blue economy that we've all been waiting for. I'll pull that strand around renewables and, that you touched upon, and I'll come to you, Finn. I know you're with the State of Green, and it's a partnership between the government and the private sector in Denmark. And Denmark has been exemplary in pioneering a lot of the green transition efforts, not just domestically, but also globally. For example, its partnership with the USA, where they've been providing some regulatory and policy, sharing their regulatory and policy experience, particularly around offshore wind. I wanted to talk to you more about offshore wind in particular. What are the insights and learnings from Denmark that the other countries can learn to be able to really push and give an uptake to the adoption of offshore wind in other nations as well? And how can Denmark really collaborate and enter into similar partnerships in the global south, where there isn't just that knowledge and capacity building support, but also a transfer of technology and capital, which is more crucial for these countries? And just a quick follow-up to that would be that how does one address concerns around the potential impacts of marine ecosystems when it comes to offshore wind, for example, or jurisdictional disputes, or even concerns around ocean governance and sovereignty, which is quite a challenge, particularly in the South Asia region. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Thank you for inviting me. Lots of good questions. Starting from the back, I think there's a lot to be done in international cooperation. So it's about cooperation, it's about capacity building, it's about commitment to nature, biodiversity, and in particular, in the latter part, I think we've come a way in Denmark, but not that far yet. And the same goes for other countries. So cooperation across borders on these issues, I mean, for fishermen, for securing their revenue in the future, etc. Maritime spatial planning, taking into account defense areas, etc. So it all hinges on this kind of cooperation. And I think we built the first offshore wind farm in Denmark in 1991, so more than 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of experience. How to get it to work, how to get public acceptance of it, how to cooperate with other stakeholders. And those experiences we are very pleased to share, also with countries in the Global South. More recently, we have entered a green strategic partnership with India, where offshore wind is also one of the key aspects. And I think this kind of cooperation partnerships are crucial. Denmark has, I think, about 26 government-to-government cooperation agreements with other countries, many of them in the Global South, where we can put out energy advisors from the Danish Ministry of Energy, Climate and Utilities, and they can sit and give experience from Denmark to their collaborators in the various countries. So cooperation, as I said, commitment and capacity building. And when it comes to financing, for instance, we also have a lot of experience. We have a number of the world's biggest wind developers based out of Denmark. They are developing not only in Denmark, but around the world. Most recently, the idea is to build so-called energy islands, also in Asia, where we have a big Danish wind developer who's willing to also put in the finance, secure the various funds that will be available and needed for these things. So basically, I think we have come a long way. We have made a lot of mistakes in Denmark over the years that we're also willing to share, but generally speaking, I think we are on the right track. And from a cooperation point of view, I think we've already the partnership with India is relatively new. It's only a couple of years old, but we are gradually developing also with ORF, your organization. So I'm optimistic about our future cooperation.
Thank you. We've come to the end of this session, I'm afraid, but I think what I learned from each of you and your inputs is that, and I think as the ambassador very succinctly put it, is that blue diplomacy is key to the blue economy, to the promise of the blue economy. And I hope we can collaborate and continue to do more work together. It's not just institutions and think tanks and private companies, but also governments and multilateral institutions. And I think a very multi-stakeholder-led effort will really help us hold onto this promise and bring it to reality. So thank you all for joining us.